How you doing, Mr. Paul?
Oh, well, I can't find my business cards for cleaners.
Dan Vermont.
We're going to go ahead and get started for this evening. Hopefully, we'll have a couple more council members that will wander in. Welcome to the August 8th Washougal City Council Workshop Meeting. Jennifer, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Costin? Here. Councilmember Greenlee?
Here,
Councilmember Shoemaker? Councilmember McDaniel? Councilmember Delavar?
Present.
Councilmember Russell? And Councilmember Morris?
Here.
If you don't mind, since our agenda is so short this evening, can we go ahead and put the public comments just towards the end? And
Sure.
is that okay with the public? Excellent. Jim, you're up first. Agenda bill,
First of all,
utility and temporary easements.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, one item on the agenda tonight. Hope everybody had a chance to review your packets. This is part of the W Street Water Line project. So we wanted to bring it forward tonight as we awarded last week. So we wanted to get this on the agenda tonight. It's an agreement, basically an easement agreement with the Croziers. They own the property up there. And this is an opportunity for us to loop our water system. And basically is what looping is that we connect one neighborhood to another neighborhood. And it's kind of configured in a loop. We connect our water lines and so it helps us with water quality, it helps us with pressure issues, and it limits service interruptions if we have that looping in place. So we went through the process of looking at the easement and went through property appraisals, ran it through English Lane Marshal office, and that is where we're at. It's a $3,500 credit for the Crozier system development charges, and that will pay for the easement across there. And with that, and there's not much to it, I know the packet's kind of large, and hopefully everybody had a chance to review it, but are there any questions on the Crozier Waterline Agreement?
Rod?
Jim, is there any future plans on opening that street through?
We don't have any plans at this time, no.
Any other questions for Jim? The agreement is in perpetuity, though.
Yes.
Okay. With that, we'll go to public comments. Any members of the public wishing to address council this evening? Come on up. My apologies. Come on up to the microphone. If you would, give us your name and address.
Amber Hanley, 2997 H Street. There's no sidewalks in my city or on my block for 2700 block, I guess is what you call it. My grandparents built that house. They were the second ones in the neighborhood, and we're the third generation in the same house. And there's a traffic problem in that the neighborhood is converting to younger tenants. There are a lot of kids on the street, and we also have the park, Hathaway Park, and the high school within half mile of my house. People are using that area as a thoroughfare right now with East Street constructions. They turn the corner and gun it to the end of the road. We have dogs running around, and I have a 1-year-old. My neighbor has 5 kids. Lady across the street has 3. And as I said, the older tenants in the neighborhood are kind of converting to younger families. So I'm trying to find out how to go about submitting my street for serious considerations for sidewalks and drainage. I did start collecting signatures. I've only got about half the street at this point, but my neighbors said that they have already done that, so I don't really want to turn in signatures just to have it fall on deaf ears. So how
Jim, we
do I
don't
go about
currently have H identified specifically on our pedestrian plan, do we?
No, we actually have 34th Street that we're looking at in the next couple years, hopefully. And then some work there on J Street as well. And that should relieve some of the pedestrian traffic, I would think, you know, that kids would maybe jog over to 34th and then up, or up to J Street.
I did talk to Will Noonan, and I can't pronounce the name, Simon Adams or Simon?
Right.
Through email. He did say that there is plenty of city property along that street. There's probably a good 15 to 20 feet on the north side of the street. There's never been anything other than sprayed tar and gravel on that street that I've
Right.
seen. So, is there anything that I can do to help get this going?
Mr. Mayor,
Local
would you mind just maybe sharing with her the process of how the sidewalks get onto, for most of the,
Yeah, depending on the amount of traffic that's through there and where it's identified on our plans is kind of how we put it in, but at the same time, our plans are put together for, I don't want to call them wish lists and Christmas lists, but they're kind of sort of that way sometimes when we don't have a dedicated source of funding to be able to put in sidewalks other than when streets get completely rebuilt and that type of thing. And I know we've got, Jim, are there only 4 or 5 streets that are on the pedestrian bike plan right now?
Yeah, I'd have to double check the CFP. I know they're scattered around the city, but if I,
Yours-
I'm sorry.
Yours is certainly one. What we've been trying to do is identify those that are so close to the schools and stuff. Not that the 2700 block of H Street isn't close to Hathaway. That's certainly a given. And trying to do some stuff through some grant programs and that type of thing to try and get some of those in.
Some beautification grants is how it was put to me, and things of that nature.
Not that we've been able to do for sidewalks that I've ever heard.
But that they weren't designated specifically to my street. As you said, other streets have been designated. So how do I get to the wish list?
Actually, through the process of your signatures isn't a bad way to make sure that we remember that those are out there. I know the Public Works Department, I charged the Public Works Director a few months ago with coming up with a complete plan that is probably gonna be a few decades in the making. As you probably know, we've got a lot of streets that don't have anywhere near, same shape as yours.
Right.
No curbs, no sidewalks, no stormwater, no anything. They're just, Maryland's is another one right back there. And so it's trying to, again, match those dollars to where we can do it, sometimes putting in for some of the grants that we may be eligible for, and hopefully getting and having some matching money to go towards those as well. So,
Now, applying for grants, that's not something that the public's normally involved in? Or is
Um,
there some way to help you?
There's,
Yeah, if I could speak to that just a little bit. We actually are looking at 34th Street, and it's a Safe Routes to School grant. And is what we do is we first contact the Department of Transportation, and they send an engineer out. We look at all the areas in and around the schools. And, we mention 34th Street, but they look at all the streets in the area, and then they determine which ones might qualify for that grant. And since 34th Street was on their list, that's the one that we're probably going to move forward with because the funding's there. So that's kind of the process as far as the grants go. If there was some petitions and, the school district wrote a letter as well, and maybe an HOA, that stuff gets to us, and then we can put it on our transportation improvement plan, which we update every year. Our capital facility plan is updated, every 6 years, but the TIP is updated every year. So those are things that we could add at a later date.
When you say the school to write petitions, is there somebody in the school that I should speak with?
Well, you could speak with the school district and talk to them and see if they would be in support, of something like that. That's important as far as the grant process goes as well. But like anything else, we have to prioritize. There are a lot of streets without curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and we're just doing our best to prioritize.
Right. Yeah, even the apartment complex across the road, there's more than just the houses. There's
Oh, yeah.
like 20 units in that apartment complex full of kids.
yeah.
So, all right.
And then clear to the worst cases, Councilman Morris mentioned there are also local improvement districts that can be put in place as well. Typically, those involve the homeowners or the property owners for some sort of payment in there. The city may go in. We may be able to do it through some grants that maybe we don't have the total amount of money to do the whole thing, so it becomes a kind of a partnership of a program out there. But it does come back typically on the homeowners as well in order to pay some of that in there. And that, Jim, I don't know that LIDs don't have to be on both sides of the streets, do they? It's really whatever the property owners at the time in the city agree to as far as the plan?
Yeah, I would think, I mean, if it's on one side of the street, I would think the property owners, all get together, and if they just want one sidewalk on one side, I think that would be fine. I'd have to do some research, I think, to make sure of that, but I think that would be okay.
Obviously, appearance-wise and the improvement-wise, only one side of the street's gonna get the benefit of it, even though the kids will have a sidewalk in proximity to be able to use. It won't be like cleaning up both sides of the street in
As
there.
far as I understand, the city doesn't own property on the south side of the street anyway to put sidewalks. So, I'm not really with that.
Why don't you get Jim's card from him and then come in and discuss what an LID is? As long as you've got your neighbors willing to sign a petition, it sounds like they're interested in trying to get something done up there.
Yeah.
If you can further educate that group that's willing to sign up, there's a real good chance that we could do something different and part of the ownership would be on the homeowners themselves to get those things put in. But at least you know how that process would work.
Right, yeah, good. So I'll finish that and get back to you.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Amber, thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to address the council this evening?
I'm Marilyn Terrell. I'm at 950 G Street. Recently, my friends and I were discussing, well, they first started out asking about the what was happening with G Street with the commercial business. And it led into businesses that we see in Washougal that we really like, but we feel that their business practices are gonna lead them astray. It's like teaching a kid to ride a bike. You teach him and then you walk away and leave the kid to get himself killed or whatever. These people start businesses and may or may not really know how to make a business work. In the case that we're thinking of, cases that we're thinking of, we are pursuing it as these businesses as to be too high-end for the area, but that's our perception. WSU has a lady who teaches small business, and I've taken her class, very interesting. SCORE offers these classes, and I'm wondering if there is, it's one thing for us to rush around trying to bring businesses in, but if we don't support them when they get here, we're not doing anybody any favors. We're just breaking hearts along the way. I'm hoping that there would be somebody in the Washougal side of Camas Washougal who would be dealing with economic development in the sense of business development. This really sank into me when I realized that, we think we're smart, but we don't know everything, and this message got through to me. But I thought, gee, when I shop at Camas Safeway, I'm taking business away from Washougal Safeway, which may or may not, since there's no tax on groceries, that may not be a big deal, but the idea is that there ought to be businesses, we would hope there are businesses in Washougal that are more attractive to us than to heading east and west, I guess that is. Anyway, so is there such a thing? Is there a possibility of such a thing?
As a term of art, what you're talking about is called economic gardening, which is has to do with another term of art, retention and expansion within economic development. It's something that the new SWEDA, Camas Washougal Economic Development Agency, will engage in the future. It's not something that we can start up next week, but we have had some discussions about that. and where we might go. I know that Commissioner Lampton is going to be at, Port Commissioner Lampton is going to be at the Northwest Economic Development Training Course in Ellensburg for a week this coming August. I was there 2 years ago. Dave Ripp was there, who's the executive director to Port, was there roughly a dozen years ago. And economic gardening and that kind of thing is something that is discussed as a topic in that training. So I would say that we will get there. Other potential partners, of course, would be the banks, who can teach us about SBA lending, although the WSUV Small Business Administration Extension helps with that also. There's even some thought that maybe we could create an entrepreneurs club at the high school to get kids thinking about what it would take to create a business and make it work.
The questions that we were raising amongst ourselves were, how do we bring to the attention of these business owners the fact that they are not doing well to us, by us, in our perception? Offering classes, at the same time they don't know that they need classes is a little tricky.
It is, and that's part of the discussion that we hope to begin having with our existing businesses. It kind of starts out with a knock on the door, and I hesitate to say we're from the agency and we're here to help, but that's kind of the plan, is that we would say to them, you have this existing business. Is there anything that we could help you do to help you expand, or even just to stay? In the case of kind of what you and I think of as medium-sized businesses, but in the business world are small businesses, we would also ask questions about who are your suppliers and who do you supply to? Are there people in your supply chain that should be closer to you? But with truly small businesses, of small retail or home-based businesses, that conversation will be there. And once we get a little bit better organized as to what we have to offer for economic gardening.
Good.
And if you would like to, on the slide, give me some suggestions, that would be a wonderful thing.
Well, this all started out as a complaint. No, it was sort of, anyway, it was sad. We miss Big Blues. I considered Big Blues to be a luxury for me. It was expensive, but it was, when I was a really good girl, I could take myself to Big Blues and have dinner there, or have a dinner to take home. And we started talking about other businesses in town that were like that, but we were concerned about, Big Blues disappeared one day. We didn't even have a chance to say goodbye or to go and say, what's wrong? Why are you leaving? It was gone. And we don't want to see that happen to the other businesses that we like and would like to see develop. We think they have a good product. We think they're screwing up. We'd like to see it better. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Your points are well taken. Certainly anytime you can give that feedback back to business owners directly, it means a lot to them. I know that.
Well,
Typically, if they're wanting to stick around, it will mean a lot to
it's
them.
not easy to do sometimes.
It's not. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is George Drolinsky. I live at 780 G Street. I am 86 years old and I've lived every day of my life in West Louisville. And there are about 3 things that really irritate me right now. The first one is, why in heaven's name did you ever take the exit off of E Street onto G? You blocked me from going to my home. I'm only the 4th house up from E Street. I gotta go up to 9th or 12th and go to G and drive back to my house. Now let me tell you a little story about that. I was coming out of Camas the other day following a pickup. We stopped at the stoplight on 6th. Then we started up and I'm watching this pickup. That restaurant on the corner has an access from Washougal. So he goes up this way, and here they got those red stakes. And he goes up there, turns across and goes through his driveway, around his building to get to G Street. And I'm thinking, holy cow, that's not a bad idea.
You must have been behind the same guy we were.
So, and the parking is this way on that restaurant like this. So I got to thinking, well, now, if he came around there and these people had just finished dinner and was backing out there, and he's gonna hit them, and you're gonna have a big lawsuit on your hands. So you better do something about that left turn signal down there. The other thing is, wait a minute, I gotta stop and think a little bit now, I'm not as quick as I used to be. It's my neighbor, the young lady named Julie. She gets up about 5:30 in the morning and goes to work. And I was talking to her there, and I said, boy, you should get up early. And she said, yeah, but I got a job. And I said, that's right, you got to do a lot of things you don't want to do. But she was talking to me about it, and I saw it happen. There's that much water in the street in front of her place. And when the cars come down G Street, if they're meeting another one, they get into this puddle of water and scatter it all over her lawn. And she was upset about it, and I said, that's not right. That's wrong. And I said, they just raised our rate $16 to take care of stuff like that. And we said, here at the city, you got that much of water hanging there and they're scattering all over the place. So the road has a crown on it, and that side of the water runs into a big field, which is all, but her side, it comes down like that, and she don't have a curb, but she's got land that comes up there, and they get about that much water into this little setting here. And when the car comes by, they just splash it all over. It depends on how hard they're going, but I know they splash half of it to her porch. One of these days, you want to get it all over her porch. I told her the other day, I said, that's not right, that's wrong. He says, get a lawyer and sue them. And she said, well, I wouldn't want to do that. And I said, why not? That's wrong. That puddle of water shouldn't be there. They come down to work on it once in a while, scatter a little gravel around it, but it just don't work. The water's always there.
I see Mr. Dunn was making notes as you were speaking.
They've been down there and worked on it 2 or 3 times, but it just scattering that gravel, that don't do it. They either gotta cut a hole and put a drain in there or level off the highway, one of the two. I got something else, but I can't, oh. Don't you people have a criteria or something that when you hire somebody, he meets a certain qualification? I'm talking about the police department. Do you have a setting where you can't be more than 6 feet 4 inches tall, can't weigh more than 180 pounds, or you have to be physically fit? Don't you have that kind of a ruling?
I think for the most part, our requirement falls into they have to be physically fit. Doesn't say what size they have to be or not be, but they've got to pass the physical standards, yes.
Well, maybe you ought to start a physical fitness class for some of them around here. I got one other, but I can't think very right now.
No problem. George, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else from the public? Okay. I've got no items this evening. David, do you have any additional items? Anything from council members? Molly?
Just last week, we did table one agenda item which had to do with Cremain Memorial Gardens and the term scatter gardens. So Jim and Suzanne both did a little background work for me, and so scatter garden is defined in RCWs, And I think that's why they left it in there, so that it would comply with the Washington State definition of scatter garden. And it allows both for, not really scattering of ashes, but without a container and now with a container. So it has both those options, which is why we left the terminology was left intact. So I just wanted to make that clear. It seemed to be a little cleaner to me, but I can understand your questions about it.
Dave, anything? Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, with regards to businesses and the city's role with businesses, I think we as a council need to be careful about how much we direct business or make the assumption that we have the ability or the right to tell businesses what to do. There have been times when I've seen businesses make an obviously stupid decision and just give them a call and say, hey, and then just as a private citizen say, hey, you know, I see you guys have a sign that says this. Do you realize there's a typo here? I know, I always get on the typos, but sometimes they're kind of embarrassing. And, you know, sometimes they appreciate it, sometimes they don't. But one of the things I think we need to concentrate on as a city is just keeping the same standard for what we do, protect life, liberty, property, and to make sure that the streets, as we hear tonight, streets are maintained well, you know, prioritize our sidewalk development, et cetera. But as far as businesses are concerned, if they somehow think that they're doing business one way or another, that's what consumer response is for. But I would hope that the city stays out of the business of how business does what it does.
I just wanted to mention that I was in SeaTac for all day Tuesday, Wednesday, and most of Thursday as a trustee for the Employee Benefits Trust for the Association of Washington Cities. The principal product of the trust is medical coverage, and we spent about as grueling a 2.5 days as I think I've been through since freshman finals in college, thinking about what we could do as a trust to flatten out the cost curves for medical coverage and how we will respond to the new laws that are coming online next year about the creation of what are called exchanges, which will make available medical coverage to individuals and small groups. And since most of our cities fit within that definition, what it means to us. So there was a lot of skull sweat on what we can do to improve the situation for our member cities. And I just wanted to mention that there are a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes on how we can work to limit the growth in the rate of growth in the expenses that the city confronts.
Yeah, I want to go back to something Councilman Delavar said, and as I hope everybody understands, council's position here is policy makers. And if we're going to, if in that realm, that's why we have SWEDA now available to the business owners that want to come to Washougal and Camas. I think that staff, last week we talked about the fact that staff's going to go through and do an evaluation and an assessment of where our fees are at and make sure that we're paying our bills. But I also think that of Paul Dennis and SWEDA, maybe we're going to get ideas there on how to streamline our process a little bit better than we have now. But I totally agree with Councilman Delavar. It's not our job to go out and drag businesses in. That is, in fact, we're limited by state statute as to how far we can go on some of that. So I really think that if people have suggestions and that type of thing, to bring it back to us, because then we can streamline the process. We can work on the fees and permitting process, and that's our job.
John? Anything?
Molly, did you have something? I know you had your hand up just a minute
I
ago.
just wanted to kind of comment also on Michael's statements, and that is that, you know, we do have a Kamas-Washougal Chamber of Commerce. And I know that there are businesses whose job is to help small business become more effective. And that would be a really good resource for struggling businesses. Maybe they're not members of the chamber, but there certainly could be an outreach program of some kind. And that's where the real expertise in business is in the chamber here locally.
I just want to report back to the council that the Community Development Committee had a public outreach up at Lookout Ridge. Some of our faithful attendees here were present, and that was nice. We had a total of about 16 people in attendance from the neighborhood primarily. And what we did is we didn't solve the world's problems or anything to that effect. But what we did is we just took questions, because a lot of things that are going on up in that area in particular is they just have questions that they'd just like to have answered. And so we got a wide array of them, primarily community development questions. Some of them were public works questions, which I think Public Works Committee would be interested in seeing. And then some of them were public safety as well. But basically, we came away with about 20 questions, and so I'll be submitting those to staff to kind of just see if I can get some clarity on them. And then we'll probably go back probably sometime in the next month or two and sit down and say, here's the answers to your questions. And then talk to them about, okay, do you guys have ideas? Now that you have asked the questions, you've been given the answers, do you have any ideas on how we can move, change things in your neighborhood? So kind of like an idea bank. And so I just want to pass that on to you. It was very productive. There were a lot of compliments to the city. And there were also, just some things that just people just didn't understand. And a lot of it had nothing to do with necessarily city policy as much as it did the lack of city policy probably in regards to some of the development that was done up in that area. And not having some long-term thinking going on as that area was being developed. So it should be interesting to see how that all comes out. But I just wanted to report back to everyone.
If you would, make sure and get those questions to staff email form so that they
Yes.
can, we have had ongoing discussions on a monthly basis with a lot of the folks up there, and most likely the questions you went through are
Probably
the same
so.
questions that we've already delivered the answers back to them.
Probably so.
But if you can rephrase them in a way that has a different outcome, that would be a wonderful thing.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Any other items from council? Okay, we're adjourned. Cool.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, you set a record.